You have always felt it, a second personality living in the back of your mind. You feel it when you smile politely while something cold in you keeps counting the exits. You feel it when you forgive, and a quieter part of you memorizes the betrayal. You feel it when you act good, and something darker whispers, "That was weakness." You try to pray it away, meditate it away, rationalize it away, and it stays. You were trained to treat that darkness like an intruder. You were trained to call it unhealthy, negative, sinful, ungrateful. You were trained to amputate it to be lovable, and that training made you predictable. It made you usable. It made you safe for everyone who benefits from your restraint. Today, we open the forbidden book. Today, you stop begging the world to be fair. Today, you look directly at the truth that terrified a genius, and you take its power. Here's the part nobody tells you. Jung didn't fear your anxiety. He feared your innocence. He feared what happens when millions of nice people keep denying their shadow self, until that denied force erupts through politics, mobs, relationships, workplaces, and everyday cruelty like a psychic tsunami. And you've felt it. You've watched less intelligent people rise by being louder, colder, more ruthless. You've watched manipulators weaponize your empathy. You've watched the world reward performance over substance. You've watched your sincerity become a leash. The system needs you gentle. It needs you emotionally transparent. It needs you eager to explain yourself. It needs you ashamed of your anger, because a person who has mastered shadow integration is hard to exploit. A person who has weaponized detachment is a nightmare to control. And the forbidden question you're here for, the one you're not supposed to ask out loud, is this: what did Jung see in his visions that made him fear for the future of humanity? You're going to get that answer, not as mythology, not as interesting psychology, as a strategic map for how power dynamics actually work, inside you and around you. But I'm warning you, this knowledge is not for the fragile. If you want comfort, leave, because by the end of this you won't be a blind believer anymore. You will be an awakened sage, someone who can look at the horror, accept it without flinching, and use it to become untouchable. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop a "sea shadow" in the comments, so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. You keep trying to be one person. You keep trying to be consistent. You keep trying to be authentic, as if authenticity means only showing the parts of you that won't disturb anyone. But you are not a single person. You are a civil war inside a body. You have a persona, the socially acceptable mask that earns you permission to exist. And you have the shadow self, the parts of you you were told would cost you love, status, safety, belonging. And the first forbidden psychology lesson is this: your shadow does not disappear when you deny it. Your shadow becomes strategic without you. Your shadow becomes a saboteur, a poltergeist, a silent enemy inside your own house. You wonder why you procrastinate right before success. You wonder why you attract takers. You wonder why you freeze when you should speak. You wonder why you overthink after you've been disrespected. You wonder why you feel exhausted after being around certain people. This explains exactly why you sabotage your own success, because you're not just fighting the world. You're fighting the part of you that knows the world is not fair and is tired of you pretending it is. You were taught that being good means being harmless, but the world doesn't respect harmless. The world uses harmless. The world pets harmless like a dog, and then forgets it in the rain. So your shadow starts doing its own math. Your shadow starts making you late to obligations you secretly resent. Your shadow starts making you forget to answer people who drain you. Your shadow starts making you numb in situations where you should feel. Your shadow starts leaking sarcasm, coldness, disdain, tiny acts of revenge that you can still pretend you didn't mean. And you call that mood, you call that burnout, you call that stress. No, that is power you refuse to integrate. And the most dangerous part is you still think your darkness is personal, just your flaw, your defect, your private shame. Jung's terrifying realization, the existential truth that changes everything, is that your darkness isn't only yours. It belongs to the collective unconscious. It moves through crowds, it infects groups, it rides trends, it possesses nations. Civilization is just a thin layer of ice over a deeply black ocean. You think you're above it because you read books. You think you're immune because you're rational. You think you're safe because you mean well. You aren't, and Jung wasn't. But the visions in 1913 predicted something terrifying that is happening now. Before you get the visions, you need the leverage point. You need the reason this isn't just deep. You need the reason this becomes your advantage in social dominance, manipulation defense, and power dynamics. Here it is. The person who can look at their own shadow without flinching becomes opaque, and the opaque mind is hard to manipulate, because manipulators need your emotional leakage. They need your facial apologies. They need your over-explaining. They need your need to be understood. They need your guilt reflex. They need your compulsive niceness. Weaponized detachment starts when you stop trying to look good and start trying to be free. And now, you're ready to open the vault. Jung didn't write his most important work for the public. He didn't publish it as a neat self-help guide. He didn't package it as motivational content. He wrote it like a man documenting an invasion. The Carl Jung Red Book, also known as the Red Book, was not created as entertainment. It was created as a record of dissent, a record of confrontation with the unconscious, a record of what happens when a disciplined mind opens the door and something ancient walks in. There is a reason this book was kept in a bank vault, not because it's spooky, because it's operational, because it's forbidden psychology, dangerous to anyone who still wants to believe they're purely good. Jung didn't think this up. He lived it. He hallucinated it. He experienced visions. 1913, the months before World War I, visions of Europe drowning in blood, bodies piling, a flood of death rising from the earth. And then history followed. So ask yourself, if a man saw a psychic picture of the future, what else did he see? Don't judge this idea yet. Wait for the final synthesis. Because the answer to your forbidden question is not Jung saw war. Plenty of people feared war. Jung's final warning, his Carl Jung Final Message, the thing that haunts the edges of his work, was deeper. He saw that the human psyche can become infected. He saw that the collective unconscious can spill upward, hijack the conscious mind, and turn ordinary people into instruments of a force they don't understand. He called it a psychic epidemic. You think evil is a decision? Jung saw that evil is often a contagion, a mood, a myth, a collective dream that enters you through repetition and fear and belonging. And you've watched it happen. You've watched crowds go feral. You've watched people justify cruelty because everyone agrees. You've watched intelligence bow to group emotion. You've watched ethics melt under pressure. You've also watched it in smaller forms, workplaces, families, relationships. You've seen how one toxic person shifts the emotional weather of an entire room. You've seen how one manipulator can turn 5 people against you with a whisper. You've seen how quickly people choose comfort over truth. That's not just drama. That's power dynamics. That's mass psychology. That's the collective unconscious wearing a human face. And this is the part that should make your stomach go quiet. You have been trying to be good in a world that is structured to reward unconsciousness. You have been trying to be open in a world that uses openness as data. You have been trying to be understood in a world where being understood is often the first step to being controlled. So when you hear Carl Jung read book. Don't think of literature. Think of a weapons manual for the inner world, and wait until you understand who Abraxas is in the next section. It changes everything. You were taught a childish cosmology. Good is good, evil is evil, and you just need to choose the light. Jung did not accept that. Gnostic wisdom, especially the older, darker strains, doesn't flatter your innocence. It doesn't soothe you with simplistic morality. It tells you something that sounds like heresy until you see it everywhere. Reality contains opposites, and your psyche contains them too. So here is the line you will resist, precisely because it is an existential truth. God isn't just love, God is also cancer. God is also... That is the Abraxas paradox. You don't have to like that sentence, you have to understand what it points to. Abraxas, in Jung's work and in Gnosticism, symbolizes a force that contains both creation and destruction, light and shadow, divine and demonic, not balanced in a cute way, integrated in a terrifying way. And this is why Jung's confrontation with the unconscious scared him, not because he saw darkness, but because he saw that darkness isn't an external enemy you can exorcise. Darkness is part of the engine. You see it in nature, you see it in human history, you see it in your own mind when you get the urge to say the brutal truth, and you swallow it to keep the peace. You see it when you fantasize about disappearing from everyone who used you. You see it when you imagine a version of yourself that no longer asks permission, and you shame yourself for it. You call it too much, you call it unspiritual, you call it not you, but it is you. The reason you are anxious is because you are suppressing half of your soul, not metaphorically, practically. Because every time you suppress your anger, you don't delete it. You store it. Every time you suppress your desire for power, you don't become humble, you become manipulable. Every time you suppress your capacity for coldness, you don't become kind, you become a resource for predators. This is where weaponized detachment begins. You stop pretending you're only light. You stop advertising purity. You stop volunteering your innocence as proof of worth. You accept that you can be loving and lethal. You can be calm and dangerous. You can be generous and unwilling to be used. And the moment you accept that, your fear of others starts to dissolve. When you accept this, your fear of others disappears instantly. Because you stop needing them to be good. You stop needing them to be fair. You stop needing them to validate your worldview. You begin to observe. You begin to calculate. You begin to recognize the game. And here comes the next pattern interrupt, because if you've been living as the nice one, you need to hear this without cushioning. This knowledge is not for the fragile. If you want comfort, leave. Because the next truth is what Jung feared most. Not as an idea, but as a future. Jung looked at the 20th century and saw something that the modern mind still can't tolerate. The psyche can become a battlefield larger than the individual. He saw that when enough people repress their shadow self, when enough people outsource their moral thinking to institutions, slogans, leaders, tribes, the shadow doesn't vanish. It collectivizes. It becomes a psychic epidemic, and once it spreads, it doesn't feel like evil. It feels like righteousness. That is the terrifying realization. That is why your good intentions are not a shield. That is why being educated is not immunity. That is why your logic alone doesn't save you. This is not philosophy. This is the mechanics of your nightmares. You see it when outrage becomes entertainment. You see it when cruelty becomes justified because the target is labeled wrong. You see it when people who once had nuance turn into chanting mouths. You see it when fear becomes identity. And you see it in your private life when one person's insecurity infects the whole relationship. Until you're apologizing for needs you should never have had to explain. Now connect the dots to your own wound. You were the one who tried to be reasonable. You were the one who tried to be kind. You were the one who gave second chances. You were the one who believed that if you just stayed consistent, people would eventually respect you. But people didn't respect you. They read you. They read your guilt. They read your conflict avoidance. They read your hunger to be seen as good. And they use that as leverage. That's not just toxic relationships. That's manipulation. That's dark psychology. That's power dynamics. And in a world full of unconscious people, infected by fear, status games, and group myths, your openness becomes a liability. So here is Jung's final warning, translated into your daily reality. If you do not integrate your shadow, you will meet it outside you. You will meet it as the boss who exploits you. You will meet it as the partner who disrespects you. You will meet it as the friend who drains you. You will meet it as the social climate that punishes honesty. You will meet it as the inner voice that sabotages you when you're about to win. Because winning would force you to become someone you've been taught to fear. And yes, this is why the news makes you sick. The psychic infection in this section is why the news makes you sick. Because your nervous system recognizes the collective mood. Your body feels the collective unconscious moving like weather. Your mind tries to rationalize it, but your instincts know something is spreading, and the modern world amplifies it. Algorithms monetize it, media packages it, social platforms turn it into sport. If you're an intellectual, you feel it even more intensely because you can see patterns, you can see cycles, you can see the way history rhymes, and you feel helpless because you were never taught what Jung was trying to teach. The first battlefield is internal. If you can't rule your inner kingdom, the outer world will recruit you into its war. So what did Jung see in his visions that made him fear for the future of humanity? He saw mass possession by unconscious forces. He saw that when the shadow is denied, it doesn't become weak. It becomes mythic. He saw that modernity would give the psychic epidemic faster transmission, mass communication, propaganda, endless stimulation, emotional contagion. And he saw that the future human, your future, would be tempted to trade inner sovereignty for external belonging. Now here's the twist that makes this video dangerous in the best way. The same mechanism that creates mass possession can create personal invincibility if you learn the rules. And that's next. But the visions in 1913 predicted something terrifying that is happening now, and the next section shows you how to step outside it. You've been taught that detachment is cold, that silence is avoidance, that distance is cruelty. That teaching was installed for a reason. Because the person who cannot detach is easy to program. If I can make you react, I can move you. If I can make you explain, I can trap you. If I can make you defend your goodness, I can lead you. If I can make you crave approval, I can price it. Weaponized detachment is not being heartless. It is refusing to be harvested. It is the strategic choice to become opaque. It is the decision to stop giving people emotional access they didn't earn. It is the decision to stop being the public charity of your own attention. So here's the first tactical rule. You stop volunteering your inner world as proof of sincerity. You stop narrating your motives to people who are searching for angles. You stop arguing with anyone who isn't responsible for your outcomes. You stop chasing closure from people who benefited from confusing you, and you implement this silence, not as a tantrum, as a doctrine. Because silence does something brutal to manipulators. It removes their feedback loop. They need your reaction the way a parasite needs blood. They need you to get emotional so they can call you unstable. They need you to get defensive so they can call you guilty. They need you to get explainy so they can twist your words. They need you to stay engaged so they can keep draining you. Strategic silence starves them, and yes, it will feel unnatural at first because your nervous system was trained to repair tension instantly. You were trained to soothe others so you could feel safe. But that's the old program, the blind believer program. The Awakened Sage program is different. You observe without engagement. You let awkwardness hang in the air like a weight. You let their jokes die without rescuing them. You let their bait rot without biting. You let their confusion be their problem. You let them feel the consequences of not being clear. And then something changes. You notice their respect recalibrate. You notice their behavior become more careful. You notice their tone shift because they can't read you anymore. You become a mirror instead of a performer. Now a pattern interrupt, because some of you still think this is about being mean. This is not about hurting people. This is about not being controlled by people. You can be ethical and still be untouchable. You can be kind and still be sovereign. You can be generous and still be dangerous to exploit. Now stop for a moment and calculate the energy you waste on being understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop for a moment and calculate how many hours you've spent rehearsing conversations that never happened. Stop for a moment and calculate how often you gave your best to people who gave you convenience. That energy is your life force. That attention is your currency, and you've been handing it to people who didn't even respect the transaction. This explains exactly why you've been nice and still felt dirty, because niceness without boundaries is self-betrayal. And self-betrayal always turns into resentment. So here's your second tactical rule. You build a response delay. You stop responding immediately. You stop letting other people's urgency become your emergency. You stop confusing accessibility with value. You let messages sit. You let demands wait. You let people experience time as a boundary, not because you're playing games, because you're reclaiming your nervous system. Because when you respond instantly, you signal that you are on standby. And the world treats standby as disposable. Now here's your third tactical rule. You reduce explanation. You don't over-justify. You don't overshare. You don't provide a full legal defense for a simple boundary. You use clean sentences. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. I'm not discussing that. I'll think about it. Then silence, and yes, the guilt will rise. The old program will scream, you're being unfair, you're being cold, you're being selfish. Good. That guilt is not morality. That guilt is conditioning. That guilt is the leash. And if you want to become a respected strategist, you cut leashes. Don't judge this idea yet. Wait for the final synthesis, because soon you'll see how this detachment is actually shadow integration in action. And when you master this detachment, you will notice something that feels like magic. People start projecting onto you. They start telling on themselves. They start revealing their intentions, because you're not filling the silence with your neediness. Your quiet becomes a pressure chamber. Your calm becomes a lie detector. But you still need the final step. Otherwise, detachment becomes numbness, and numbness becomes emptiness. You're not here to become dead inside. You're here to become integrated, and that is next. Shadow integration is not you acting dark. It's you becoming whole. It's you reclaiming the traits you exiled: aggression, ambition, self-prioritization, cold discernment, sexual power, competitive focus, ruthless boundaries. It's you learning to hold a knife without cutting yourself. And here's the part that will threaten your identity. You were taught that your darkness is the enemy. They lied. Your greatest weakness in this game is actually your dormant weapon. Because your darkness, your shadow self, is the part of you that sees reality without needing it to be pretty. Your darkness is the part of you that knows when someone is lying. Your darkness is the part of you that knows when a compliment is a hook. Your darkness is the part of you that knows when kindness is being used as a currency. Your darkness is the part of you that can say no and not negotiate with guilt. So let's answer the forbidden question fully, with precision. What did Jung see in his visions that made him fear for the future of humanity? He saw that the modern human would be tempted to live as a persona, an image, while denying the inner beast. He saw that the denied beast doesn't die. It joins the herd. It becomes ideology. It becomes possession. It becomes a psychic epidemic. He saw that technology would accelerate suggestion, meaning the collective unconscious could spread faster than wisdom. He saw that people would call their possession progress, morality, justice, truth, while behaving like sleepwalkers. And he saw the only antidote, conscious confrontation with the unconscious, not as a spiritual hobby, as survival. That's why the Carl Jung Red Book matters. That's why Carl Jung Final Message keeps resurfacing. That's why the Red Book feels like it's staring back at you. Because it's not asking you to be good, it's asking you to be responsible. Now here's the integration protocol, practical, immediate, weaponized. Step 1. You name the shadow. You stop calling it my anxiety and call it what it is. Anger, envy, hunger, dominance, revenge fantasies, control needs, contempt, lust for status, desire for freedom. You don't moralize it, you label it, because what you can label, you can wield. Step 2, you locate the trigger. You ask, where does my shadow appear? Is it after you've been ignored? Is it when someone interrupts you? Is it when someone takes credit? Is it when someone is vague and you feel manipulated? Is it when someone tries to guilt you? Is it when someone asks for just a favor and you feel your spine soften? You track it like a strategist, not like a victim. Step 3. You extract the message. Your shadow is not random. It has intelligence. If your shadow appears when you're overlooked, the message is, you want recognition, so build leverage. If your shadow appears when you're used, the message is, you need boundaries, so withdraw access. If your shadow appears when you're rejected, the message is, you need self-respect, so stop negotiating your worth. If your shadow appears as sabotage, the message is, you fear the cost of power, so train for it. This explains exactly why you sabotage your own success, because success demands a new identity, and your old identity was built to keep you safe, not powerful. Step 4, you create a controlled outlet. You don't unleash your shadow on innocent people. You don't become reckless. You don't become abusive. You become disciplined. You channel aggression into training, craft, strategy, negotiation, boundaries, and achievement. You channel coldness into discernment. You channel competitiveness into excellence. You channel revenge into elevation. Revenge through superiority is clean, it's silent, it's legal, it's unarguable. Step 5, you adopt the Abraxas lens. You stop demanding that reality be only light. You accept paradox. You accept that love without teeth is appetite for exploitation. You accept that peace without boundaries is surrender. You accept that being nice is not the same as being good. You accept the existential truth. You are capable of demonic dynamism, and that is why you must be conscious. And now the final move, the move that turns this into social dominance without theatrics. You become unpredictable to manipulators, not chaotic, unreadable. You stop reacting on schedule. You stop rewarding bad behavior with attention. You stop offering emotional labor as a default. You stop explaining your ethics to unethical people. You stop trying to save anyone who enjoys drowning. You withdraw that validation. You withdraw that access. You withdraw that performance. And you watch what happens. They scramble. They test you. They provoke you. They call you cold. They call you changed. They call you selfish. Good. That's the sound of the old contract burning. Now a retention hook. Because some of you still don't understand how deep this goes, but the visions in 1913 predicted something terrifying that is happening now. And in the next minutes, you'll see how to immunize your mind against the psychic epidemic without becoming paranoid. Here is the tactical advantage your emotionally reactive competitors will never have. You will be calm while they bleed attention. You will be silent while they confess. You will be detached while they beg for reaction. You will be consistent while they spiral. And you will become what sovereign minds always become, an observer, not a participant. But there's one last layer, because detachment and integration are not enough if you keep living inside a world that tries to infect you. You need an initiation, a daily practice, a way of living that makes you psychologically untouchable, and that's what we finish with. You don't become untouchable by watching one video. You become untouchable by adopting a code. A code is what keeps you from being swept into the collective mood. A code is what keeps you from catching the psychic epidemic. A code is what keeps you from becoming a puppet of the collective unconscious. So here is your initiation. Simple, brutal, effective. Rule 1. You stop confessing your inner world to people who haven't proven loyalty. You stop giving your vulnerabilities to people who collect weaknesses like currency. You stop telling people what hurts you if they've already shown they don't handle it with care. You keep your softest parts behind walls. Your psyche is a silent fortress. Rule 2. You practice the one-breath gap. Every time you feel provoked, every time someone insults you, pressures you, rushes you, guilt trips you, you take one breath. You don't respond on their timeline. You don't give them the satisfaction of immediate access to your emotions. You create a gap. That gap is your freedom. Rule 3. You downgrade emotional engagement with low-integrity people. You become polite, brief, and unreachable. You don't punish, you don't preach, you don't chase. You simply remove yourself as a source of fuel. This is manipulation defense at its cleanest. Rule 4. You treat attention like money. You budget it. You invest it. You stop donating it to people who bring you no return, no respect, no trust, no growth, no peace. You stop buying relationships with your exhaustion. Rule 5. You build your private life like a sanctuary. You curate what enters your mind. You curate what enters your home. You curate what enters your schedule, because the psychic epidemic doesn't only come through politics and media, it comes through people. It comes through friends who gossip. It comes through partners who destabilize. It comes through workplaces that reward dysfunction. It comes through families that survive by controlling you. So you make a decision. You will not be a host. You will not be a container for other people's chaos. You will not be a dumping ground. Rule 6. You embrace Gnostic wisdom without turning it into cosplay. Gnostic wisdom is not about sounding mysterious. It's about seeing the world as it is, layered, symbolic, paradoxical, dangerous, and meaningful. It's about recognizing that your psyche is not only personal, it's connected to the collective unconscious. It's about recognizing that what you repress becomes fate. It's about recognizing that shadow integration is not optional if you want a life that belongs to you. Now another pattern interrupt, because you might still be clinging to the fantasy that you can stay pure and be safe. Civilization is just a thin layer of ice over a deeply black ocean. You don't become safe by pretending the ocean isn't there. You become safe by learning to swim. Now, if you're still here, you're not fragile. You're ready. And I'm going to give you the final synthesis in a way you can actually live, not just admire. Don't judge this idea yet. Wait for the final synthesis. Because the final synthesis is the moment you stop being a used nice person and become a respected strategist. It's the moment you stop being a blind believer and become an awakened sage. It's the moment you stop running from your shadow and start leading it. And you're about to feel something rare. Relief. Not the soft kind, the cold kind. The kind you feel when you finally stop lying to yourself. But before that, one more retention hook, because this is the hinge point. When you accept this, your fear of others disappears instantly. And you'll see why the people who once dominated you suddenly feel smaller. Now listen carefully. You don't need to become evil. You need to stop being naive. You don't need to become cruel. You need to stop being accessible to cruelty. You don't need to become paranoid. You need to become discerning. This is the difference between forbidden psychology and fear-mongering. Forbidden psychology gives you sovereignty. It gives you mental fortitude. It gives you strategic thinking. It gives you emotional intelligence that doesn't collapse into people-pleasing. It gives you the ability to see manipulation without becoming obsessed with it. And it gives you the ability to live with your own depth without drowning in it. Now we end where we started, at the forbidden question, so you don't leave with mystery but with power. What Jung saw was not just personal darkness. What Jung saw was that the future of humanity depends on whether individuals integrate their shadows or project them onto enemies. That's why his work keeps returning. That's why the Carl Jung Red Book still feels like it's marked, "Do not read." Because if you read it properly, if you actually confront what it implies, you can't go back to being innocent. You can only go forward into responsibility, and that is the final warning. And now, you either take it, or you keep paying for denial in every relationship, every negotiation, every workplace, every moment you swallow your truth and call it kindness. This knowledge is not for the fragile. If you want comfort, leave. If you're still here, you're not here for comfort. You're here for control of yourself. You're here for the existential truth. You're here for shadow integration. You're here to become immune to the psychic epidemic. You're here to understand the collective unconscious without being dragged by it. You're here to use Gnostic wisdom not as a belief, but as a lens. You're here to turn the Carl Jung Final Message into a personal advantage. And now, the final synthesis. The light does not heal you. The darkness completes you. You were never meant to amputate half your psyche to be acceptable. You were meant to integrate. You were meant to become whole. You were meant to be both, compassionate and dangerous to exploit. So here is your final challenge. Stare into the mirror today. Acknowledge the monster. Smile at it. Not because you worship it, because you own it. Because the moment you can smile at your own darkness, you stop fearing other people's darkness. And when you stop fearing it, you stop obeying it. Now, drop this in the comments. Exactly. So you mark the moment you stopped running. I see the shadow. And if you're ready to stop being psychologically harvested, if you're ready to become one of the awakened, one of the sovereign minds, one of the silent strategists, hit subscribe, not for entertainment, for training, for manipulation defense, for power dynamics, for emotional detachment that turns into social dominance, for mental fortitude that doesn't beg the world to be kind. Now that you understand your soul, you must fix your reality. Watch this next, and whatever you do, don't stop now. The on-screen video matters more than you think. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.